Good evening and welcome to the November 2nd, 2022 Lower Makefield Township Board of Supervisors meeting. I am your chair, James McCartney. I ask we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, quick roll call. Supervisor Weiss.
Here.
Supervisor Blundy.
Here.
Supervisor Grenier.
Here.
And Supervisor Lewis unfortunately had to drop off. He will not be at tonight's meeting. Just a reminder, public comment on agenda items will be taken as each item is discussed. Agenda item number 4 is community announcements. Reminder, during this portion of the agenda, residents and youth organizations may call in to make special announcement or contact the township at admin@lmt.org to request a special announcement be added to the agenda. The EAC will be hosting a Halloween candy wrapper recycling event from November 1st to November 5th and November 7th to November 10th between 8 and 4:30 p.m. 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Drop-off boxes will be located in the lobby of the Community Center, 1515 Oxford Valley Road. And runners from the beginner to advanced are invited to run a 5K, 10K race at Makefield Highlands this Friday, November 4th. All feeds will be donated to Folds of Honor. The sponsor is by State Farm Insurance. The annual Veterans Day Parade and ceremony will be on November 5th with the Lower Makefield Veterans Committee. The parade will run along Edgewood Road from Whitehall Drive to Heacock Road and conclude at a ceremony at Veterans Square. The parade will start promptly at 1 p.m. Come join us and line the streets for our veterans. Sponsors for this event are Artist Memory Care and Commonplace Reader. And the Lower Makefield Township will be hosting a blood drive for the with the Red Cross on Wednesday, November 23rd from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the meeting room at the Township Building, 1100 Edgewood Road. Agenda item number 5, consider approval of minutes for October 19th. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Blundy, seconded by Supervisor Weiss. Any discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Agenda item number 6, engineers report. Mr. Bockel.
Hello, supervisors. The first item on the agenda is to consider the bids for the mechanical, electrical, and general construction contracts for the administration building renovations project. We opened those bids on September 28th, 2022. And as a whole, all of the bids came in well over our budget. The general contract was, the low bidder was Donald Reesinger in the amount of $223,402. For the electrical bid, the low bidder was S&S Electrical Services for $46,564.96. And then for the mechanical bid, Clipper Pipe and Service Inc. Was the low bid in the amount of $61,567. Again, this is prices that came in well over the budget. When in talking with the contractors who put in the bids or the bidders, they seem to believe that a significant portion of that was just due to the price of building materials skyrocketing within the last 12 to 15 months. In some cases, threefold beyond what was the price 12, 15 months ago. So for that reason, we do not recommend awarding the bid, and we are going to reevaluate with the chief and township staff as far as whether we want to rebid or not in the future.
Do we need a
So are
motion?
you recommending a motion to reject all bids and then rebid at some point?
Well, not even to
Not
rebid.
rebid, yeah, just to reevaluate.
Yeah, or a motion to reject all bids.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Grenier. Any discussion?
Yeah, if you
Go ahead.
just simply, what was the budgeted amount?
130,000.
About 200K over in the bid,
Correct.
all in.
Yes.
Any other questions or supervisor comments?
I'll only say, we almost had to cancel one of the blood drives because this room was like a sauna. I know that the HVAC system is held together with a lot of duct tape and work by the team. So I do hope we're able to move forward somehow in a way that makes sense.
Any other comments?
One other question,
Mhm.
Chief, since I want to say you're spearheading this, but a lot of these are related to police department issues.
Yeah.
What does it do to you in the time that we can't do all?
Yeah, it just sets us back time-wise, that's all. We're hoping, and Derek's helping us from the road department, and we're looking at other contractors, and we're going to do a scaled-down design of the second floor, and then we'll reconsider how we're going to proceed, whether we're going to try to get a government contractor or go back out to bid.
Any other discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed, none, motion carries 4-0. 6B,
Yes, similarly, we opened bids for the Maple Vale Drainage Improvements Project Phase 2, which is the inlets on Highland Avenue and outfalling them onto the stream along Taylorsville Road, and then also clearing of the sediment or gravel bar within the stream along Taylorsville Road. We opened 3 bids on October 25th. The low bid was to Passerini and Sons in the amount of $89,925. The estimated budget for this project was $60,000. And again, we would be recommending a rejection of these bids. And in discussing with Derek from Public Works, we believe that there's some opportunity to scale back the scope and perhaps, a lot of this is the work within the stream is specialized work. It requires a contractor who's familiar with doing work within the stream, accessing the stream, cleaning out. And we only received 3 bids. I think that we would receive a lower bid or a more acceptable bid if we put it back out for bid the first part of next year. And so I think that would be a more acceptable bidding climate. And so that's would be my recommendation.
so again, you're asking to reject all bids for the Maple Vale Drainage Improvements Project and kind of regroup. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
Second,
Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Blondie. Any discussion?
Major?
Sure.
This is phase 2 only.
Correct.
Phase 1 is the
Phase,
thing and everything.
yeah,
else.
phase 1 is the pipes on the south leg of Maple Vale Drive at Taylorsville Road intersection. We had the pre-construction meeting today, actually, with
Guys out.
the contractor. So that work is going to be proceeding within short order. They're in the process of ordering the materials, and they don't expect a long lead time for that material. So
In terms of the overall stormwater management issues, flooding issues that we're addressing with the overall program, I'll call it both phases.
yes,
There are still going to be improvements made for Maple Vale that can abate some of those flooding issues.
that can address some of those issues. Yeah. Between the Maple Vale Phase 1 project and also the road program, where we're milling down 3 inches and only putting back 1.5 inches to provide additional capacity within the roadway for the larger storms to manage the water within the gutter and within the road, as opposed to spilling over top of the curb and into people's lawns and homes. So
And that's
that work is proceeding. Yeah,
actually starting pretty soon.
correct.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. I believe this week we all received an email regarding Yardley Woods update. Does anybody have any specific questions regarding that email for Mr. Pockle at this time? Any public comment?
It seems satisfied.
Yeah, I believe that
The
they're,
email seemed that way. I
yeah,
just wanna make sure
absolutely.
we-
Yeah, I think that the HOA president communicated that they were satisfied the way that Ryan and our interaction with them was moving along. So yeah. Any public comment regarding that? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move over to project updates. Any questions on any of the 4 project updates listed?
yes, I had a question from a resident, actually. So Andy, I see that The contracts are signed and the pre-construction meeting scheduled for November 2nd, AKA today, on the Woodside Bike Path. Can you tell us what happened and can you kind of sketch forth a timeline?
Yeah, so we did have a pre-construction meeting with the contractor today. The first item on their agenda is to relocate some utility poles and coordinate with Pico as far as moving utility poles out of the way of the location of the trail. So they did not provide a schedule. Once they're going to be we're issuing notice to proceed, which would allow them to then provide submittals, provide a schedule, provide product information on the materials that they're going to use. And so we anticipate getting a schedule within the next couple of weeks from them.
So likely the construction actually starts in the spring because it's getting cold?
It really depends on their manpower and whether they feel like they have available crews to work it over the winter. So I would say that I wouldn't rule out work starting before the spring.
Any other discussions? Sure.
Those, I was checking up last weekend. Those poles, there's room to move them.
There is.
I wasn't sure with some of the basins nearby and what.
Yeah, no, there's in fact, not all of them need to be relocated. There's a long line, but we've in the design phase, we've worked the path around some of those poles, but there's a couple that are just need to be relocated. Yeah.
Surprised you said that. And then the other question, can you give us, last meeting, we had an issue with Skylar Tennis Courts. Can you give us an update on how that's going?
So with the Skylar tennis courts, they've put down the stone base. They've milled the existing courts, removed the fence, put down stone base, put down the asphalt base course, and installed the storm drains. So they are scheduled to start excavating the fence posts and the net posts and start installing that tomorrow, or actually they indicated Friday. So we'll be back on site with them monitoring construction beginning Friday.
And they have their ENS plan.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Any other discussion regarding project updates? Any public comment? Hearing none, move over to agenda item number 8. That's you. So you have two agenda items under fire services, if you want to just go through them.
Can you hear me? You good?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. So after reviewing our current fire prevention code and stuff like that, I like to get permission tonight or consider authorization to advertise 2 amendments I'd like to make to them. The first one is currently we are using the 2000 version of the International Fire Code. I would like to upgrade to 2018, which would stay in current with our current 2018 building code, residential code, and stuff like that. Something that just unfortunately has been overlooked over the years. So
Quick question on that. Is
Yes.
there a new code that's going to be issued in the next?
So what'll happen is, talking to the building side, from here on out, when they upgrade to just say 2021, 2024, the fire code will go with that as well.
Automatically.
Automatically. So
Okay.
when they do that, we'll do that with this as well. This
Cool.
is just getting this up to, so we can start enforcing this now.
No brainer. So we need an authorization to advertise amendments. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Motion made by Supervisor Blondie, seconded by Supervisor Grenier. Any discussion?
to your,
Sure.
yeah, to your point about keeping up with the ordinances, is it written specifically to 2018 or is it with the most current version of IFC?
It's written as 2018 right now.
2018, yes.
Would you be, because we've done this with the UCC construction code, we've done this with lead building code, all that stuff, where instead of just putting out 2018, once you get the new code, we're gonna have to do this again if you want to update it. So if we had Rayer language that tied it to the latest code.
The only reason I didn't choose to do that was there's amendments that I have in here from what they have that upgrades to our operations here. So our fire connections, our identification of the building, stuff like that. I amend that stuff. So if something changes in the code, I want to keep what we have concurrent or make sure that it follows our best operations here. So Instead of just updating it when the state updates it, I'd rather review it and then make sure we're good and then update it at that point as well. So,
A new ordinance every couple of years.
Yeah, and
Or
talking to
license, whatever.
Jim and stuff, I think the end of next year, we're gonna upgrade to the 2021 building residential. We'll do fire, everything, so everything stays in line.
Just one.
So,
Any other discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none. All those in, call to question, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries 4-0, and you have one more, Tim.
so the second one, since the 2003, when we adopted the 2000 fire code, the fire inspectors go out and do fire inspections, and they have a fire safety registration form they have to fill out. Getting pertinent information such as emergency contacts, building representatives, updated building information, business information, stuff like that. There's really nothing in our fire prevention code that enforces the businesses to fill them out and pay the respective fee, which offsets the fire inspectors' salaries and stuff like that. So I would like to get authorization to advertise that ordinance in there as well. So it requires them, so we have some backing when they don't do it. We can say we have some force to make them do it, because it's important to us here at the township and at night for the police and fire that we have the correct emergency contacts for these businesses. So we're not doing unnecessary damage, so forth and so on. So
Understand. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Blondie. Any discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Chamberlain. Have a great night.
Thank you very much.
Chief's report, you want to plant some trees?
Yeah, plant some trees. This is a request from the EAC to plant 30 fall Fiesta sugar maples along the west side of Mirror Lake Road at the Patterson Farm. The trees are approximately 30 feet on center, located approximately 30 to 40 feet from the edge of the pavement. The trees will be purchased, if approved, by Fenbrook Farms in the amount of $5,550, and that could be funded by the tree bank. So I would ask your approval to move forward with that project.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Supervisor Blondie, seconded by Supervisor Grenier. Chief, off the top of your head, do you know how much is in the tree bank roughly? Had to
I
guess.
don't, but I can give that to you shortly if I look.
If you can-
On that.
Over 100,000? I'm satisfied with
yeah.
that. That's great. And Fall Fiesta sugar maples sure sound really lovely.
So if I could,
Tree.
if I could,
Nice native
They
tree.
are, they are. Jim and Linda and all the EAC, thank you. This particular project came out of the volunteer plantings that we had on Patterson Farm over the last 2 years. I'm getting a lot of reverb. And if you're driving up Mirror Lake Road in the next few days, you'll see that there is already a natural path of maples starting on the next block along the CVS Woodside Church and then to McCaffrey's. And this will kind of complete that vista. The EAC is fond of saying the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. And I think that's really true in this situation, but come back in 20 years, folks, that strip is going to be magnificent.
Can't wait to see it. Any other discussion?
Just for Andy, from your perspective, I just want to be careful. I mean, they're 30 feet off the road, but there's no stormwater issues at all. They're all covered. It looks good.
Yeah, no, the Public Works is out there, and Linda was out there, and they did all the digging and don't dig, don't call
Electrical,
kind of stuff.
Eco, overhead, underground, stormwater, and all was looked at. Yeah.
Any other discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Solicitors report, Mr. Truelove.
Yes, there's an executive session tonight that started at 6:45, ended right before this meeting started. All board members were present at the executive session along with the chief. Mr. Lewis was present for the executive session as well remotely. Barbara Kirk from my office was present for part of it. Items related to real estate, personnel, and information items were discussed at the executive session. First item under my report, Sub A, is you may recall at the last meeting, Mr. Lewis and I had a sidebar to discuss what the numbering was for the resolutions presented that night. We were off by 4 numbers respectively. So we need a motion tonight to confirm and correct the numbers of the resolutions that were approved at the last meeting. And we would ask that that be done by motion tonight.
Do I hear a motion?
Before we get to the motion, I just note that the new numbering Never mind. So moved.
You were looking at E, weren't you?
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Blondie, seconded by Supervisor Grenier. Any discussion? Thank you for pointing this out. Thank you to Supervisor Lewis for pointing it
Yeah,
out.
no, and Katie McVan and Janelle Kieslick and I had email conversations where we will now be on the same page when these are put on the agenda.
Good.
So we'll have, which is reflected in item number E.
Next time by being by 4, if you could get it closer to 2. we'd
Yeah, the over and under will be different.
Yeah, sure. Any public comments? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. The next item is to consider approval of settlement agreement and general release between Lower Makefield Township and Boucher and James Inc. And the item after that, it would be to authorize the appropriate individuals to execute necessary documents related to the same. By way of background, I'm sure those in the public who are listening or looking note that this stems from the railroad crossing height, for lack of a better term, at just down the street here. Edgewood approaching Sandy Run resulted in the closure of Sandy Run Road. It was determined that at least from the township's perspective, that some engineering design flaws occurred. Litigation ensued. I won't get into all the details and background. I will say that the Attorney General also participated in from his or their perspective, that office as well. Bottom line is outside counsel, Craig Tourette of Curtin and Hefner, litigated this matter very effectively. There were 2 mediations that occurred, and eventually the proposed settlement amount is $766,000.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Supervisor Blondie, seconded by Supervisor Weiss. Any discussion?
Question.
Yes.
For the solicitor, please. Moving forward, or members of the board or anyone from the township, or I guess 2 questions. Are we allowed to comment moving forward on the quality of work related to this particular project? If it comes up.
I don't see why not. I think it's, you certainly, I think, I can, let me look, there's nothing in there that says anything about non-disparagement, as I recall looking at it. I don't think that was part of the, and I don't think frankly, it could be enforced in this situation either, but, let me take a quick look. I will certainly let you know, but my recollection from looking at was that was not a condition of the, hold on just a second. I mean, there's no admission of liability, but that's standard language in any of these matters. And there's an issue with non-publicity, but as we know with the right to know law, that would be something that wouldn't be enforceable anyway. There's nothing in here that says anything about non-disparagement. And frankly, not that any comments would necessarily be considered disparagement. So I'll just say that I think it's fair game to have that discussion. Other litigation is still ongoing with Boucher and James elsewhere, both at the state level and other municipal levels. So.
And you actually touched on my second question, that it's subject to right to know. The other question, the total number is 766 and change, I think you said, right?
Yes.
Chief, do you have the number to date all in that we've,
I do not.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
it's, I think we're a little well,
A little north of that, I
a little
think.
north of that, but we're close. So
Well, I will say from a litigation perspective, and there's no science to this many times, I think that the way it was handled was certainly very effective. One thing that was avoided was a trial. Not that a trial is necessarily bad, but trials are expensive. Expert witnesses are expensive. The time to prepare for trial, having done trials in my younger days, the time consumes you, and the hours that you bill reflect that. So the expenses, even if we got a better result, I can't even guarantee that the net result would have been better for the township. Plus, there's always the right of appeal and things like that. So on balance, and again, I defer to the outside counsel on this, but I think they did a very effective job in getting this result. That's just my perspective. So
appreciate that.
I'm just happy that if we agree, we have closure on this phase of the township. And it's been a long time coming.
Well, it's something, Fred, when you and I ran together, right?
This is one of the reasons why we ran.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm happy to see a hopeful end to this in the very near future.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Motion carries 4-0.
The next item would be a companion motion, would just be to authorize all necessary and appropriate individuals, including but not limited to the board, interim township manager, special counsel, and the solicitor to take any and all actions required to satisfy the settlement agreement and general release, including but not limited to the execution of the agreement and the filing of pleadings or other documentation. Just so you know, now we have to authorize the release to be signed. And then once that's done, certain documents are filed in the Court of Common Pleas in order to settle, discontinue, and end. It's called. Those have to be executed as well. So it's just a matter of kind of house cleaning, but that needs to be done.
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Blondie. Any discussion?
Really quick question in terms of timing of this. It's a timing question. The way this is written, would it make sense to say interim township manager and or township manager, depending on?
We can amend it that way if it's
That's the only thing I'm
acceptable.
thinking of.
That's
Allow
fine.
whoever to,
I'm with it.
whatever.
Whatever works.
Okay.
Do you accept that amendment, Fred? So do I.
Let the record state that the maker of the motion accepted the amended, and so did the second of the motion.
Correct.
Any public comments? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The next item is, and I don't know if the chief wants to take part of this, so I could talk about it too. Obviously, we both can do it, I guess, back and forth if we need to. Is to consider approval of the tentative contract agreement between the township and the Police Benevolent Association per the terms outlined in the memorandum of agreement. Just by way of some background, negotiations started, I think, in the spring, Chief? You and Mr. Ferguson sat down with the representatives, accepted their proposals for review, and then obviously negotiations occurred after that. The backdrop for the negotiations is that we all know that inflation is rather high these days, so that's certainly something that would be a consideration in negotiations in terms of how to evaluate demands and responses. Also, the police union always has a right to proceed to arbitration, which I have participated in at various levels from time to time. Interest arbitrations can be expensive. Sometimes you get good results, sometimes you don't, and there's no right to appeal generally. So the bottom line, I guess my point is, I think this is an appropriate resolution. Some of the details include a 4-year contract. The first year proposed raise is 4.75%, with declining percentages each year after that. There's also, I think it's very important to note, there's also substantial contributions to the pension plan from the individual officers. That is something which is not insignificant, especially given my experience with some of the other police contracts in the area. I think this is there's skin in the game for the individual officers, not to indicate that they didn't believe so before, but now it's on paper and there's a significant percentage that's related to that. So that in some ways offsets the overall cost of the township. Also something that's I think is very significant, although the dollar value right now is not great, but for the first time in the history of the township, the PBA members will contribute at least some toward the premium share for their medical insurance. That's not an insignificant thing, even though the amount is not large. Once that's done, I think that's a sign that, you know, that's the reality is set in, frankly, for everybody, that everybody does that. And then there's a few outlier townships and municipalities where police do not contribute, but I suspect over the next several years, they'll become more common that they do, but they are contributing to that here. And there's some other provisions that are, I think, beneficial to the township. Obviously, there was a give and take, but I would say on balance, it was a very fair contract. Chief, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I don't, Dave. Very good presentation. Thank you.
So do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Grenier. Any discussion?
I think I'll only say that, I think this represents that we're moving forward to fund a professional police force they do an excellent job. In addition to funding the police force, we also are, giving carrots and promoting further education for members of the force, which I think is important. And from all accounts, they take great advantage of it, which leads to an even better police force. So I'm happy with what we've come up with.
And just to that point, the department is accredited. It sounds nice on paper, but there's a lot of work that goes into that. And to maintain that accreditation requires the entire department to be part of that. And I think that goes to your point about maintaining the quality of the training and upgrading all aspects of police work. And you know, in the environment we live in these days, this department, again, I just based it on my experience and where I also do work elsewhere. This department is at the top of the list in terms of its ability to do that. So,
Well, thank you all for your very kind words. We appreciate that. Thank you.
And just one more. Thanks so much to both the chief and our former manager who worked on the negotiations of this really all year. And, you know, we really wouldn't have been here without either you or Kurt. So thank you very much.
And I just want to add that I think this contract, not only fair for our officers, our command staff, but for the residents of the township in general. I think it's a very fair, appropriate contract. And I also give thanks to you, Chief, and to Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you, sir.
Any other discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0.
Next on my report, you'll notice it is resolution number 2217, properly numbered. Act 57 was an act that was passed by the state legislature this past session that requires, under certain circumstances, when notices have either not properly been received or sent out for tax payments, that there's a waiver process that allows the taxpayer to seek some relief, not relief in paying taxes, but at least some of the back charges. It's a mandate from the state that has to be completed by January 3rd of this or January 9th of this next year. It applies to all tax entities, which would include school districts as well. The purpose of this then is to provide the framework for that. And then we would coordinate with the tax collector. Like this, if you notice in the resolution, there's reference to forms and things like that. There may be forms that are developed at the state level. We're not aware of those yet. We'll certainly work with the tax collector to make sure that her office is up to speed on all the latest information required for this as well. So,
Do I hear a motion regarding resolution 22-17?
So move.
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Grenier. Any discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Motion carries 4-0. And I think that does it for you on the solicitor's report, but we'll bring it right back to the zoning
yeah,
hearing.
I'm back. We like it or not, I'm back again.
All right.
Zoning Hearing Board, Appeal 22-1982, Munns Construction / Joyce Pate for the property located at 60 Sutphen Road, tax parcel 20-042-154. The applicant is requesting a variance from Township Ordinance 200-23 capital B in order to construct a 319 square foot addition, which would increase the impervious surface from the existing 29.48% to 31.07%, where 18% is allowed. Obviously, the existing impervious surface is much higher than what's permitted normally. I think there are some offsets for stormwater management and mitigation that are included in this. We would recommend deferral unless there's a contrary sentiment by the board. Hearing none. Appeal 22-1983, Amy Schaefer at the property located at 3 Central Drive, tax parcel 20-039-127. The applicant requests a variance from Township Zoning Ordinance 200-22, which would decrease the side yard setback to 10 feet where 15 feet is otherwise required, and from Township Zoning Ordinance 200-23 capital B, which would increase the impervious surface from existing 18.6% to 20.4%, where 18% is the allowable amount, in order to construct a 334 square foot addition. Again, we would recommend deferral for reasons similar to what we recommended in the earlier matter. Again, and the Zoning Hearing Board deals with these matters very effectively. Item C, Appeal 22-1984, Catherine Wary and Joe Latsko for property located at 1474 Woodview Road, tax parcel 20-065-276. They request a variance from Township Zoning Ordinance 200-27 capital B in order to expand the size of the current driveway, excuse me, which would increase the impervious surface from existing 27.1% to 30.1%, where 26% is the allowable amount. Similar to the other items, again, Zoning Hearing Board deals with these matters all the time and requires some type of mitigation to offset the increase. We would again recommend deferral. Finally, Appeal 22-1985, Morningside Massage and Diana Slaymaker for the property located at 7 Morningside Drive, tax parcel 20-038-153. The applicant requests a variance from Township Zoning Ordinance 200-69 capital A7 in order to allow visitation of clients and patients in a single-family detached residence. In this matter, since it is a use variance in a neighborhood involving uh, basically an occupation. We can recommend participation really just to ensure that parking is limited and maintained in an appropriate manner, as well as the hours of operation. So we would just recommend if the board would see fit to authorize our office to participate on behalf of the township for that
I'd like to
purpose.
make a motion to participate in appeal number 22-1985.
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor White, seconded by Supervisor Grenier. Any discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. We will participate in appeal 22-1985,
Thank
and I believe that is it for you.
That is
Mr.
it for
Truelof.
me.
Thank you.
Yes.
So community development. Mr. Majewski, step on up.
Good evening,
Evening.
everyone. The item 12A, Dennis Stedman will be joining us shortly. He's just getting back to his house, so he's going to give a little presentation that he had given at the ad hoc property committee for everyone. So if you don't mind, we can go on to item 12B and 12C. That's consider pay applications number 2 and number 3 for the Lower Makefield Community Trail Project. And the payment would be to Richard E. Pearson Construction Company in the amounts of $81,290.62 and $124,042.
Let's do
Yeah,
one
we're
at
gonna do
time,
one at a
Jim.
time. So I'll, is there a motion for consider pay application number 2 in the amount of $81,290.62?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Blondie, seconded by Supervisor Weiss. Any discussion?
Mr. Ritchie, what is this particular pay application cover?
This pay application covers a lot of the paving work, the base work, and work like that. So right now we're about 52% paid up on the project. They're more like 2/3 of the way done with it. There'll be a new application coming in a few weeks for further payment. And then, as you may have seen, they started work on the ADA accessible ramps in front of the Oxford Valley Road, Edgewood Road intersection. So they had to lower that bike path in that area there. And they should be doing the concrete work for that starting next week.
It's been inspected and everyone's satisfied with the work they've done.
Yes. Yeah, this project has full-time inspection work. And also the traffic signal work should be starting this month. And with a little bit of good weather, we should be completely finished with the project by the end of the year.
Just to give a quick timeline, the little snake things that the fence, I guess there were the sill fences. How long do they stay up?
They're going to be removed. I forget when. We met about it today.
You wait until the seed and everything is, the grass is seeded and there's.
The grass is all seeded. We met with the Conservation District this afternoon,
Perfect.
and they said we're all okay to remove that,
Okay,
and it's being removed. I wish I remembered what they told me today, but
it's okay.
very soon.
Soon. Okay,
Your
excellent.
NOT, all that stuff.
We will need that at the end of the day. Yes.
So there's a motion on the floor, seconded. Do we have any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. And I believe the second one is consider to pay application number 3 in the amount of $124,042.58. Do I hear a motion?
Move. Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Grenier. Any discussion regarding this one? Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All right. I believe Mr. Stedman is not here yet, so we can keep moving on if we want to go to number D, which is discussion of reduction of the Lower Makefield Township permitting fees for Pennsbury School District. He is? You know, we're going to wrap up these other two and then we'll bring them in.
Okay. Yeah, the Charles Bay Middle School project, the permit is already to be issued for the building improvements. They're doing renovations to the entire building, adding new HVAC, electrical. They're doing all sorts of upgrades, removing asbestos where needed, and also doing an addition in the front of the building that would house their new administrative area. So that would control the movement in and out of the building. We did the calculation for the building permit fee, and the fee for that came in pretty high. I know actually one of the things we want to reduce one of the permit fees going forward next year. And as is customary with projects we have with the school district, we usually, since it's the same tax base basically paying for that, we give them a little bit of a discount after discussing the nature of the project, the amount of level of effort we'll need for the inspection or all of the work throughout the site. We believe that the cost will not exceed $200,000. In discussion with the school district, they still have money on account with us from their prior project from the Penwood Middle School. Originally, they're going to do those all at the same time. So we talked about rolling that money over into this building permit, and then they would write a check for the balance of $66,815 for the project, and that would satisfy everything. At the end of the day, it's about a 30% discount or 33% discount off the normal permit fee.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
Is a motion needed for this? Okay, so I'll make a motion to reduce the permitting fees for Pennsbury School District, the Charles Bay Middle School project by the amount specified by our community development lead.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it only because I want to have more of a discussion.
Sure. So
So-
discuss.
Yeah, well, I'll start off with what I hope is going to be the softball, right? I do remember that when Penwood's construction, certainly my kids were there for the bulk of that. Do we do the same thing at the time? Did we give a discount?
We actually did it in a way that was less favorable to the township. In that we kind of just did it time and material as we went along and tracked the hours, which came in to be a lower number than if we had done an arrangement such as this. So this is sort of a fairer balance between us and the school district of the cost for the inspection.
Okay, I mean, I just want to make sure your point about being fair to the taxpayers is something that's significant and near and dear to all of our hearts. I'll put words in your mouth, gentlemen. But because it is two different tax bases, Lower Makefield and Pennsbury residents, I want to make sure that we're spreading the love equally. So you feel confident that this is the appropriate resolution for the residents of Lower Makefield?
Yes, and in many municipalities, it's standard to give like a 30% discount off the permit fees for school district projects.
Quick question, is Falls Township offer that to Pennsbury during their projects? Their properties are located in Falls Township?
I'm not sure about that.
I'm
I
gonna
know
say no.
I know Council Rock, they do
Yeah.
that, and a number of other school
I'm
districts.
gonna go out on a ledge
They
and say
reduce it.
no.
I'm not sure. I can look into that.
Yeah, so I echo your sentiment. It isn't one tax base, it's two different tax bases and three, actually four, right?
Four.
Because you have
Tullytown
Tullytown
and Yardley, yeah.
and Yardley. So if they were all practicing this, I would say yes, but I'm leaning towards no, or we can table this.
You can always say a motion to table may be appropriate.
Make a motion to table this.
Thank you.
Until we get to all the information.
Second,
And I'm the second, right?
all right.
Yep.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
So we'll table that one.
We'll
And
look
then we have one more for you, Jim, and then we'll go back up to A for you. So request to permit construction of an in-ground swimming pool for 172 Crestview Way, exceeding the allowable impervious surface shown on recorded plan, but within the ratio permit by zoning.
What the township used to do years ago, 20 or 30 years ago, is they would often put an arbitrary restriction on the amount of impervious surface allowed in a development. And they'd use like a flat number throughout the development. That number was often lower than what would have been permitted by the zoning. So in this instance, they are allowed 24% impervious surface for the zoning ordinance. However, the recorded plan for that development, Yardley Crest, showed a somewhat lower number, and therefore they're coming in with a project that is higher than what is allowed by the recorded plan, but less than what is permitted by zoning. So no variance is needed, but approval is needed from the Board of Supervisors to allow that relief. They are doing stormwater management to handle the total increase in runoff generated by this project.
Make a motion to permit construction of an in-ground swimming pool at 172
Second,
Crestview Way.
second.
Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Blondie. Any discussion? Dan?
Yeah, sure. Do we know why there was a lower impervious area allowed for that particular development at the time? Were there was it mitigation for something else that was going on? Or is it just because it was predated something else and weren't aligned?
I think the genesis of all of this is that they came up with, they thought the number wouldn't quite work with their detention basins. So rather than having a larger detention basin, they just said, we'll have a flat number. It'll be easier to calculate for all the residents. And then we'll go with that number, and that's how much impervious surface is allowed. And our stormwater basins can handle that. Obviously, the delta here in that what they're proposing will go ahead and be encapsulated and mitigated by the increase of stormwater management they're doing on the site through an underground seepage bed.
Doing an underground seepage?
Yes. So it's a more permanent type of facility.
Any other comments? Any public comment? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0. So Jim will take you back to 12A. And if you could bring Mr. Stedman into the room, please. Mr. Stedman, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So Jim, if you want to lay the foundation for the, consider the proposal for the Patterson Farm Master Plan from Avis and Young for a not to exceed budget amount of $19,098 as recommended by Mr. Stedman and his committee.
I think you just laid the perfect groundwork.
That's it. Do I hear a motion?
Okay, go ahead.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Blondie, seconded by Supervisor Weiss. Any discussion or questions? No. The motion is to consider approval for the Patterson Farm Master Plan Management from Avis and Young for an amount not to exceed $19,098.
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask if you could include in the motion, just subject to solicitor review, not approval. I think there's a couple items in the terms and conditions I thought you might want to have tightened.
Is this maker of the motion amendable to that?
Of course.
Seconder?
Of course.
Let the record state that both the maker of the motion and the seconder are in agreement with the solicitor's recommendation. Comments?
Tough. So I thought is Mr. Stedman going to be speaking to that?
Yes.
If you have any questions, Mr. Stedman is readily available.
Okay,
Yes.
so there's no presentation that I thought we were getting a presentation.
Well, I believe I emailed it out this week.
Yeah, no, I wasn't sure if he was going to actually walk it through.
Yeah, if you'd like, we could walk.
Yeah, if you have any questions about it, absolutely, yeah.
Find everyone the game is on.
It's 0-0. We're in the bottom of the first, just so.
Yeah.
If there's any specific questions in the interest of time, if there was any specific questions in the presentation, I'd rather not take Mr. Stedman's time up and have him walk us through the entire presentation again.
And understanding the sensitivity of the evening. I get my only comments, and I made these comments last time, so I'm staying consistent. After I reviewed I guess it's a proposal. There wasn't a whole lot of meat in that proposal. There was a lot of marketing material and some pretty, what I would call vague language for a proposal of that type. And I've written proposals of that type for other things. I lean towards not voting in favor of this. In addition to that, I want Mr. Solicitor, I believe the principal on that proposal is a member of our HARB, who's a great member of our HARB. Nothing bad to say about her at all. I just want to make sure there's no conflict there. What's specific to this, given the Patterson Farm and potential historic preservation issues, et cetera. On top of that, because I'm not really clear on what the proposal is asking for. It sounds like it's a proposal. It reads like it's a proposal to help us write an RFP for future work, is because that's a lot of the deliverables are writing future RFPs. I don't know that's something I'm ready to vote for right now. And if we're gonna do a $20,000-ish proposal, I would say let's put that out to RFP to other professionals other than just one that's picked there, because we did approve some funding, right? And I understand that. I was hopeful that the initial funding we'd initiate the lead remediation of the soils in the buildings first before we dove
No.
into this, but at this point, I'm not favorable towards this particular proposal.
Okay. Mr. Stedman, if you want to take a couple minutes just to present to the board exactly why the committee was at this point asking for the 19098 as part of phase 2, I believe, master plan construction, which included project development meetings, public comments, track invoicing, scheduling, monthly reports, progress. Can you just basically break down to the board
Sure.
what exactly that is?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. As you know, the township has owned this property since 1998. There has not been a grand plan or common community vision for the property. And as a result, decisions have been what I would characterize as maybe haphazard and oftentimes appropriate in the short run. But we don't all live in the short run every day. And this is a clear community asset with agricultural and historical significance. One of the recommendations of our committee in March was that a comprehensive master plan be developed for this property before any major expenditures are undertaken, so that those expenditures could be done in context and in a consistent and thoughtful manner. That proposal was approved by the Board of Supervisors on May 31st to earmark up to $300,000 for the development of a master plan. I'm on record to say I think that and hope the committee can develop a high quality master plan for far less than that. We have developed a disciplined, staged process that meet all the LMT bidding and contractual requirements to create that comprehensive master plan that will guide this Board of Supervisors and future boards of supervisors and future committees or whoever is in charge of this township property, guide that decision-making and expenditures for a 5-10-year period and beyond. This is to be done in a long-term context. We're right at the cusp of beginning that. To next page, Jim. That's the context of it. The process as laid out, the first phase is to define the scope of the project. That is done with the committee and with professional experienced help to help develop the RFPs, to help review and score the RFPs, and to help level or score the proposals and help level the proposals for consideration by the committee for recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. So again, this is a committee that's making recommendations to you. The second phase would be to actually contract with the necessary architectural engineering types of design firms for the construction of the master plan, and then to complete its and issue a final report, which we would hope to be able to do in 9 months. That would put the Patterson Farm, create a vision and a plan that would guide the township's decision-making for the long term. The considerations in this, I think, are pretty simple. You have a 7-member volunteer committee of laypersons to lay this out, and we need to utilize true professionals in a team and quality responsible way to create a final product. The retention of this first professional firm is to manage that project, to help us create the RFPs, help us evaluate the RFPs, help us once contracts or bids are accepted, which would again come through the Board of Supervisors to help manage those what will be multiple contractors. It won't be done by a single firm. So this is a professional project management to help the committee develop this. To me, it's pretty straightforward. We do have an impressive and very economical project management proposal that has been submitted by Vision Young. And I would say, in all candor, we're benefiting by the fact that we have a close relationship and a local resident who is very familiar with all these matters in Lower Makefield and on Patterson Farm, who is willing to provide these kinds of services for what the committee believes is a very reasonable fixed fee of $2,000 a month. Little with that, I'm rounding when I say that. The committee strongly recommends that this proposal be accepted now without delay, and that we can get this important project going. This project, as I say, is all about creating a vision for the Patterson Farm to help define our uses of the buildings, to help define the work, the scope of work that needs to be done. I don't believe it's a wise expenditure to start throwing little pockets of money at certain buildings or certain issues until we know what the grand plan is for this resource. This is a marvelous asset that we have that I think is absolutely unique to our township, with the Quaker history, with the agricultural history, with the budding art community. This has a lot of potential, and it's a $19,000 and some odd project to help kick that off. And I'm just worried about further delays, because I think we'll lose momentum in this volunteer committee, and we'll do what we've probably done for the last 23 or 24 years, kick the ball down the road. It's an impressive project team. I think we're getting them at a bargain. We have a known asset in Jennifer Stark, who is a true expert in this arena that the township knows and trusts. And I believe it's time to kick this project off and make that first step.
Thank you, Mr. Stedman. Is there any other discussion or questions by the supervisors?
Yes.
Sure.
I just want to make things clear, Dennis. So I have the one question, because there seems to be a little bit of confusion. If we agree to this, Avison Young will manage the process whereby the end of 9 months or 10 months, we will have a master plan for Patterson Farm.
That is the timeline, on the assumption that decisions are made along the way. We are going to, in this project management process, be bringing back to the Board of Supervisors proposals from contractors, designers, engineers that will help us develop that will really engage, roll up the shirt sleeves and do the studies of the buildings and come up with specific engineering requirements, et cetera. Those are going to be expenditures under that $300,000 umbrella. The committee doesn't have the authority, obviously, to spend those monies or to grant those contracts. So we're going to be coming back to this board with those proposals. This is simply the first proposal to hire a professional, informed, experienced team to help us manage that project, that whole bundle of activities in a wise and cost efficient way with the right expertise. We have a lot of dedicated and talented people on the committee, but we're not stocked with architects and engineers who are going to survey the land and figure out the drainage. We need that kind of professional input. This is the first step.
All right. So we're not hiring them to develop an RFP, to develop a master plan.
They're going to
They
manage
are
the
people
entire
that-
project from the beginning
Right. So
to final report delivered to the township.
And the possible expenditure of more funds will be to engage professionals as we engage the public and we engage the possibilities to prepare property, to prepare structures, and so that we end up with a viable master plan.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
that is right. A viable master plan has to be able to have a 30,000-foot view, look down at the grand plan, the grand scheme, as well as a feet on the ground view of saying, okay, well, if that's your plan for that barn, here's what that barn needs. Here's how much that costs. It's not just an idea. It's got dollars and cents and calendars and months and weeks tied to it. So a quality master plan's got to be able to, to accordion back and forth between the big view and then get down to the ground level where decisions can be made to help implement what is a grand vision. It won't be implemented in a year. It won't be implemented right away. It'll be in phases over a long period of time, I would expect.
Thank you, Dennis. Any public comment regarding this?
Can I
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait 1 second. Sure.
I understand what Mr. Stedman's saying. That isn't what this proposal is saying. This proposal is almost notes on to me, when I read a professional proposal that's supposed to cover these items, there's almost no assumptions, no deliverables, very limited in terms of description of what they're actually going to be doing. I would not, which when it comes to these types of proposals, this is essentially a contract that they've proposed. That's what we're looking at. So from what Dennis's goal is, I don't disagree with it. What I'm seeing in front of me though is if I put myself in the shoes of someone who has to sign a proposal and be responsible for it and be liable to pay the bill, to me this puts us way too far, puts too much risk on us. I want to see some of the things that Mr. Truelove was talking about up front.
Well,
But at the same time, I think the actual assumptions, deliverables, work product is incredibly vague here. And, it's talking about writing RFPs and guiding RFPs and all that, but they need to tell us exactly what they're doing, which RFPs for what. It's not a fixed fee. It's a not to exceed cost plus reimbursables. So not to exceed is by nature not a fixed fee. It's a T&M, time and materials.
Yeah.
So I like the concept, but I can't get on board with what we have in front of us, if that makes sense. And I know others in the community will want to make there's talk about stakeholder engagement and other things in here. I don't think that their schedule in here, whether it's bids or stakeholder engagement or all that stuff that we have to do, some of it is part of what laws we have to follow as a board, as a public entity, versus how we do meetings and all that stuff. I think this schedule is shorter than what we could actually implement. So the cost will by nature go up. So I think there's stuff to work out before I would be ready to agree to this.
How do you propose that be worked out? I think the committee has been through this and has a lot of faith and confidence in the team. So what would you propose the committee do to work through that? Remember, it is a project. They're managing a project for us. They're not executing, right?
Right. Which whenever
committee's
you're managing a
executing.
project, it opens you up to a great deal more risk because their clock's always running. And if they don't give us clear indicators of what we're paying for, their clock's going to keep running and keep running and keep running. And we're going to be paying out the nose for stuff because the process will continue to
I
go.
think we're going, I think by saying that, you're saying you don't have confidence in me or the committee to manage it. To say the clock will keep running and running and running is naive at best, because we're in charge of them. They're our contract. They're our advisor.
Actually, you're not in charge. The Board of Supervisors is in charge of any contracts that we initiate and sign on the dotted line and put in our budget.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we're doing
Mr.
that
Stedman,
work on
please
your
let me
behalf.
finish. I know you're passionate about this and I appreciate that. But this board is fiscally responsible for everything, every contract we sign,
Of course.
every hour they bill, every hour that we have to pay. And when I look at this proposal, which is a contract, it's 24 pages, but only a couple pages of actual materials. It's mostly marketing materials.
It's actually not a contract, right? And that's what the
It's
amended
not.
motion is that the solicitor is going to
It's a
look
proposal.
at and make sure that we have what we need. So I just wanted, before we all like get into our corners and dig our heels in, we want to make sure we understand what we're talking
I
about.
think this needs to go back to Avison Young and say, hey, we understand you put something, this looks like they put it together in a couple hours and didn't put a whole lot of thought into it. Used a lot of existing marketing materials to show what a smart sheet looks like and guys walking around in a suit taking up a whole page. That's nice, but it's not what we need. I'm planning, but this to me is not a professional proposal that I can support. I want to do the planning. I really do, but I don't.
Understand.
This puts us at risk.
However, the emotion, I get what you're saying. I do. The motion is to approve the concept using Avison Young, subject to legal review. You hit the nail on the head. Our solicitor will take care of those things if it takes a little time before we actually sign it. But I think to get the ball moving, I think it's imperative that we approve this so that when we do have to sign the contract, there are no I's that were not dotted or T's that were not crossed. I agree with you. You have an eye with these type of things that I don't have, so I understand what you're saying. I'm not going to discount it a bit, but we have people that have some knowledge of real estate issues, preservation issues, and we have Jennifer's well known on the Harb. She has this expertise. We do have limitations. It's $20,000 plus expendables. We're going to define expendables. We can do that, but we need to move. My opinion, we need to move forward, and at this point, I don't think it's productive for us to wait until we eventually get it. And then we also have volunteers to consider that, have put their heart and soul for over a year doing this. And there's a community out there that doesn't want to see these buildings fall apart. So I think this is a good start. I think that the committee has done a great job bringing in Avison Young to manage the master plan process. I think is a good thing. The devil is in the details, but we have solicitor, we'll take care of it. And we will, if we find that it's not good for us, we won't sign it till it is. I mean, I have no problem. I'm not going to sign something that's going to put township at risk. I agree with you, but let's let the professionals work it out. I'm sure you can, put in what you think is best, but we won't sign it. But Avison Young is a respected firm. The amount of money is not insignificant, but I don't know if I want to spend the kind of money to develop an RFP and then find out it's going to cost me 60% more to do what Avison Young is doing for 20,000 or maybe 30 with expendables. So, I'm looking at it at a different end, but I totally understand what you're saying. But I think we can work this out, in the process.
So let the record state that there's an amended motion on the floor regarding
Is legal review.
Right.
So
pending legal
Does that make
review.
sense to you, sir?
So public comment. Yes, name and address for the record, please. I don't think you're on.
We on? Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Donna Doan, 2814 Langhorne Yardley Road, Langhorne. And I am a member of the community that does not want to see the buildings fall down. But I want to bring us back to the fact that a preserved farm is not just the land, it's the farm, it's the buildings that go with it. I do have a concern about this contract or document with Avis and Young. On the advice of our attorney, I requested by right to know law to see that document. We want to know what it is before it's signed. The public has a right to know. Let the record reflect, I'm the only member of the public that's here tonight. So the majority of the township will not be really hearing this discussion as they should and be quite as involved as what they really should be. I have another concern that with Avis and Young managing the project, what is the public's input going to be? We need to be able to be involved in this, not just a committee that has been hand-selected, but the public needs to know this is a very important property. There are not many communities that have the privilege to have a 350, almost 350-year-old farm. And it's a wonderful resource. I do agree with Mr. Stedman on that. It's a fantastic resource. But we have to be mindful that the decisions that we make will affect the future generations. And we want to care for the well-being of the generation and elevate the well-being of the generations that follow us. So we want to make very careful decisions. I see the word construction mentioned on the master plan document, and that concerns me. It's not restoration, it's construction, which, you know, I would not oppose some construction, but just what exactly are we getting into? I saw this board vote for $300,000 funding of lead-based paint removal, and now it seems to be $300,000 to, yeah, that was the vote for lead-based
The
paint.
amount earmarked was for development of development of master plan and an RFP to remediate lead paint.
Oh, I see. It's all in the
Part of that
details.
300, it's just it'd be hopefully a small part of the $300,000.
Yeah, we're in big trouble if it's 300,000 to remediate lead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was my question.
Yeah.
Listen, the Patterson Farm is so magnificent the way that it is. I want you just to be very, very careful about bringing in entertainment centers, art centers, whatever. The natural beauty of that farm is what draws people to it. If we add parking lots and runoff onto the farm fields and lighting that will light up the night, you're going to destroy the look and the feel of that farm and the appreciation for what it is. I feel like farming does not get enough appreciation from this board. I feel like, well, it's fine to have the farming around the edges, but let's go ahead and develop the middle of the farm. That's the feeling that I get. Maybe that's wrong, but Patterson Farm Preservation volunteers have been active in this community. We have offered to do a lot of projects. We want to get into the Satterthwaite House. I think it would be a great place to have Patterson Agriculture and Heritage Center in the Satterthwaite House, have it restored, open it to the public, do educational programming there, extol the benefits of agriculture and the natural resources, the wildlife, the quiet spaces that people need to go to enjoy, to get away from the chaos and the lighting and the traffic and everything that is
Donna,
has
I
become
don't
Lower
mean to
Makefield.
interrupt you, but I'm going to interrupt you. I'm like with you, I'm with you. And then you keep talking about people coming to the farm to enjoy. And I want to be very careful, right? The farm is not a park, right? It's an active farm.
I understand that.
I know you do. I know you do, but I also know that other people don't. And when we use that kind of language, I think it's what encourages.
Enjoying the farm, is that the language that you're not liking? People like to just go there and just quietly
I'm
observe
gonna finish
nature.
my sentence, and I do love when you want to spar, and if you want to spar, let's bring it on. But the bottom line is people think they can walk around the farm, tread on the crops, that it's a photo opportunity, that wedding parties should go there. And I want to be very clear because I know that's not what you're supporting,
Right.
right? So
I think that we
that's what
should
I'm-
definitely
that's what
have a
I'm talking
management-
about.
Yes.
And that's what I want to be very clear, as you're impassionate, as you make your impassioned plea, that we not send the wrong message to people, that they should all come to the farm and frolic and play, because it is.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm
That's what
saying
I want you
as
to be
a
clear about.
structured Patterson Agriculture and Heritage Center, we could have hours.
And I'm going to interrupt you now because I've been reading Patterson Farm preservation literature for 5 years now. one of the reasons, and your Patterson Farm Preservation is more than welcome to participate in the process if we so agree to this motion. However, Patterson Farm Preservation is not the township. Patterson Farm is owned by Lower Makefield Township,
Right.
residents of Lower Makefield
We
Township.
voted to preserve the farm, correct?
The farm, we go through this exercise for the last 5 years to preserve Patterson Farm,
Right.
exactly the way you want. However,
I'm not saying that. I'm saying
However-
that there's not an appreciation for what a farm is
and
and what it entails to keep a farm
this is
in
my
agriculture.
Ms. Stone.
Is it so wrong for me to
It
want to
is-
preserve a
it is
farm
not
for
wrong
future
for you to want
generations?
the
We've
best
preserved the farm. In fact, this board
what-
took down the,
I'm
the
taking-
other, sorry, Fred, but this board
greenhouse.
took down the greenhouse and you and others have not even ever noticed that. So it's
We
just
did
hard
notice
to
it.
sit
We
up here
appreciate that there's
and
not light pollution there.
hard
at
to
night
sit
at
up
night.
here and just
The-
get
the
slapped.
ad hoc committee was formed to protect and preserve the buildings and to find a suitable use so that these buildings may be maintained in perpetuity.
Okay, here's
The-
where we
let me
disagree.
finish.
The
Let me
use
finish.
is already there. We don't
No,
need
the
an
use is not-
adaptive
the use
reuse
is
to a
not there.
farm that's working.
Use is not
You
there.
don't
The-
want
the
to
farm
understand
is-
that
the
the
farm
barns
is-
are
is
necessary
in
for the
use.
farmer.
Land is in use, the 240 acres that have been preserved is use, but the 5 or so acres that hold the structures is a different story. There are buildings that are about to fall apart. They've been let to fall apart for the
Let me
last
stop you
24
there because
years.
Patterson Farm Preservation
Patterson Farm
contacted this
Preservation ha-
township through
And
our
I admire
attorney
Patterson Farm
and asked to
Preservation.
repair the corn crib on the farm at
Well,
no cost to
the-
the taxpayers, and we did not
There's
get a
been
response.
there's been conditions that were not acceptable to the Board of Supervisors.
We have maintained
that's been-
insurance as
that's
the
been going on
township
for
has
at least
directed
10
us
years.
for all
So-
these years.
So, Ms. Doan, we understand, but we now have an ad hoc committee. The board has already moved forward.
What will the public's
The public
ability
will
to
do,
comment be on this proposal if it moves forward as you are proposing
they
it
will
now?
manage. just
Will
like-
we be
just
speaking
like
with
the Play-
Avison
just
Young
like
or this
Play for
board?
All, just like Macclesfield is being developed. If there's new committees that need to be formed, the ad hoc committee will recommend that with Avison Young's support. We will have public meetings. This is
Then
maybe up to a
Patterson Farm
year.
Preservation would like a seat on the ad hoc committee
Well,
because we were not
you know,
allowed because some of us are not residents.
Well, that's
And that's
true. And those that are residents, didn't ask-
discriminatory
those that are,
of
those that
people
were
who are not
residents, were not-
residents
didn't
within the
ask to be put
township.
on
This
the
is a
committee.
national register property and the
It
public
doesn't
should
matter
Lower
to us.
Makefield's property.
What
And I
what
don't
matters
remember
to
it
us is
even
that
applying.
these structures be preserved, they be built properly, there's a use for them. They're not going to be showpieces.
They have
that
an
are gonna be left to fall
agricultural
apart
use.
as-
And that's what we want to promote and
Well, then we are in
preserve.
agreement, Ms. Doan.
Are you spending 300,000 to
No,
preserve those
we're
barns?
agreeing to spend
Because that would go a
$20,000.
long way to the restoration of those structures
We're
for
we're willing
agricultural
to
use.
spend, if you actually followed the committee, you'll see
do
that it
follow
might
the
be up to $2.5 million to fix these structures.
That's
So-
fine, but what will their purpose be
That
after
is up to, that
If
will,
the
that will,
purpose
that
is
is what
to-
this process is all about, Ms. Stone.
Okay,
I understand you want to do something a certain way. And Patterson Farm Preservation, we all understand that. That is not all, that is
is
not,
the preservation of agriculture in this community
we have been
important
preserving
to
this
board?
farmland for years and decades even.
And what I'm saying is a
with-
farm is
with-
much more than just preserved land. If you push the farmers
we
off the
understand.
land as
Okay.
they are locked out
Thank
of
you,
the
Ms. Stone.
barns
I
now,
appreciate it. I think,
then
Mr.
you
Chair,
will destroy farming
you're-
on
you're
that
3
property.
minutes are up.
Yeah, thank you for the
This is
comment.
unproductive.
Yeah,
We do have concerns about that document,
you,
so
Ms. Dunn.
please reply to the right to know law request.
You can do whatever
Absolutely.
you wish.
thank you. Once it's going through our legal.
In fact, we'll give it
process, I
to you.
believe
We
it'll-
can give you that proposal.
We'll give you a copy of it.
The attorney for Patterson Farms emailed me a couple of times. Once we go through this process and the documents finalized, I'll
Oh,
certainly.
that's right. The Patterson Farms represented by counsel, the solicitor will take care of it.
The solicitor, once we've legally reviewed the
Reviewed it,
document,
and-
we'll send it
Mi-
back
Mi-
out to
Mr.
you.
Peters and I, he emailed me a couple of times.
Okay.
I'll be glad to include him
Yeah.
once we,
Is there any, give me 1 second. Is there any other public comment on the phone?
There's 2 public comment online.
All right.
Bringing in Laura now. All right, Laura is now in the room.
Thank you, Laura. This is James. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Laura Tarantino, 185 Durham Road, Newtown.
Thank you. And your comment?
Yes. My comment is, I also don't want to see damage to these buildings and construction and changing the iconic vision we see. But I was curious because I do remember Ms. Doan making comments at an earlier Board of Supervisors meeting proposing the Patterson Agriculture and Heritage Center. And I was curious why we had not heard anything from the board since. I knew the plan was underway because I watched with Mr. Stedman's meetings. And I understand that Mr. Stedman said the first concern and the prime priority is to use, when possible, to use agricultural reasons for the purposes of buildings. Now, I'm an outsider, I'm in Newtown, but I'm a Bucks County person, and I'm looking and I'm seeing the largest nonprofit group that I'm aware of that has been affiliated with Patterson Farm. Here they are making a proposal, offering to help redo a building that is deteriorating. And I understand there must be friction and there's a history going on, but to me that makes perfect sense. You've got over 6,200 people making a petition saying they're concerned about this. This is a community group. It is the same, and what boggles my mind is, it looks like 10 years ago from newspaper articles that I've read, AOI was given access to be able to be at the Janney House, had wonderful terms, something like 6 years, no rent, and they just renegotiated a lease. I think that's great. They're supporting the arts, but that must have been done so quickly and so easily. Here's a proposal for someone wanting to keep the nature of the farm as a farm, giving a purpose to a building that would facilitate a general public to be aware of programs and what's going on at the farm. It's encouraging community involvement. That's, to me, seems like a fit made. And yet I can feel the tension in this room against the group for whatever reason. I'm not privy to that history, but I don't like it as a community member. It makes me angry to have seen these buildings deteriorate. We're looking at all of this. I understand the plan. I can see that. But if this person doing this plan isn't even aware this has been made as a proposal, that worries me. And it worries me that I don't know if anybody's going to know about, the status of the Pennsylvania National Register. I called them today to see what the status of any changes had been made. Nothing. And that was reported in several meetings ago. And then the 39 acres that are not a part of any easement or conservation protection, will that be a part of this plan that this firm is going to look at? Is that option available for the community to consider? Those are all valid concerns. And I'm outside of the fray. So, just bear that in mind. But I have to keep a watchful eye because I go by this every day and I don't know how I'll live my life not going by it when I'm in town, So it is a valid thing. I just would like everybody to take a deep breath and give Ms. Doan and the Patterson Farm Preservation a seat at the table, at least to be heard and to realize they represent a portion of the community.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your
Thank
comment. Thank you. I just want to reiterate that the board's intention is to make sure that Patterson Farm is preserved and we want to make sure that the buildings are restored the way that they should be restored and that the highest and best use of that space, whether it be whatever it ends up being, whatever the committee ends up seeing is the best or suggest the best thing. Supervisor Weiss was reminding me of the terms because she did make a comment about you guys, the Patterson Farm Preservation had a presentation regarding rehabilitation of one of the buildings. Is that correct? But was part of that negotiation that it was a $1 that we were gonna transfer the house to you for $1 and that was gonna be in your possession at that point?
Okay, this goes back to 2015. At the time, I believe the Satterthwaite sale was off And we were,
That's true, Donna, because I was at that meeting where you said, where you and your attorney said you wanted to buy it for $1 and I've only.
no, we didn't have an
since
attorney then.
2018.
No, we did not have an attorney.
Yeah, so I just,
Jeff Garten,
No, you had the attorney, the woman from Langhorne.
I
She
don't want to,
presented
listen,
herself
yeah,
as
I
an
don't want to
attorney.
belabor the point. I
we
just
did
need-
not have an attorney.
Just a specific question. Under the terms, were you asking to buy the Satterway house for $1? Yes or no? That's all I'm asking.
We submitted an application, an agreement of sale, because Jeff Garten said at that time that certain groups, that's the reason why we formed the 501c3, because Jeff Garten was the attorney for the township. And it was April 1st, 2015, I believe.
Ms.
You want to
Stone,
go back and look at the tape.
I don't want to go down the history of this. Did you offer to buy the property for $1? Yes.
We
or no?
did,
Okay, that's all I
as
needed
a
to know. No, I just
501c3 volunteer
wanted,
group.
I know, but
because
I wanted the person on the phone to understand that the intentions of the preservation weren't pure, right?
What are you saying? Is
Well,
not
because
true?
you were asking to buy a building from the township for $1, and the board protected the taxpayers and the asset of Lower Makefield Township by not selling it for
The
$1.
reason why we
Wait.
submitted the application for $1 is because the board did not have any funds whatsoever to spend on Satterthwaite House. One year, they only spent $50 to
But
maintain.
we're turning that. we're
So what
turning-
we were saying was a volunteer group,
Yeah.
like what happens at
This is-
Bolton
this-
Mansion
this
and
is the
other.
truth, Ms. Stone. This is the truth, as far as we see it here today. 24 years of dilapidation and neglect.
Right, the management of the farm has not been appropriate.
The
That's
farms-
what we
the
were
farm
saying.
structures. Charland Farms and our lease with Charland Farms has been very good over the last.
And they have offered to paint the barn. They have offered to do work over
It's
there.
not, we're not talking about the farm. We're talking about the structures on the farm.
Right,
You
and
know that, and I
Charland
know.
Farm offered
not-
to paint one of the barns,
I'm
and that
asking you a
offer
que-
was not
I'm
taken
asking
up
you a
by
question. Please
Township
be
Manager for
happy to
Dorchak.
respond.
I know.
What
Over
I'm
the
saying is
24
you
I'm
have
not
community
interested.
members
I am
who
no
are
longer
willing to go in and do work at no cost to the
interested.
township.
I'm interested in what this board has done, and your group specifically has tried to sabotage.
No,
So
we're trying
understand,
to preserve that
please.
house. We want Satterthwaite House to be.
Okay, so
restored.
please let us do so,
Okay, so let's.
right? We have
let
the
us-
board in
let us-
We're
place.
saying
No,
that
no,
let
we
us
have,
do-
yeah,
this
We are-
community
we are in
supports
agreement.
we're in
preservation.
agreement. We have the
However,
board in place.
Understand that the township, the duly elected officials of this township, the 5 of us that sit here are responsible for what happens at that farm. We understand what you would like. We understand what Patterson Farm Preservation would like. You're part of the process. Public input is invited, it's desired, and we hope it's accurate.
This is
just
the
like every
problem.
other
There have
process.
been so many changes of board members and progress
Well,
is made
now,
and then progress
But
is
this is
lost.
the first time major dollars were are hopefully invested in a plan that will see these buildings restored and used properly and maintained properly forevermore. So if you're against that,
I am
we
not
disagree
against
with it.
that.
Then please let us
We have
do our work.
6,000 signatures in support of preservation
there
of
you
a
go.
farm.
There you go. We're in perfect
Yeah.
agreement.
I'm just gonna, I'm gonna end the discussion at this point. I feel like it's
I've
just,
been trying to get a word in.
yeah, sure.
Really
We're having
quick.
Fun.
I think we
I
have
know.
one more person. We've
Yeah.
given you more than enough time for public comment. We
Fine,
really
Mrs.
appreciate it. If you have one more person on the phone, if you want to bring them in, I'll let Supervisor Grenier close, and then we're gonna make a vote on this motion that's been on the floor for the last 24 years.
All right, Tracy is now in the room.
Thank you.
Tracy, you can make your comment.
Hi, I was.
Tracy, can
originally
you just
showing
say
up
your name
because-
and address for the record, please?
Yes, sorry, Tracy Schrader, 22 Everett Drive, Newtown.
Thank you.
I was originally coming here because I too am very interested in preserving historical buildings. But when I saw the presentation, I see Jen Stark's name. I know her personally. I have a lot of faith in her. She's amazing. And $20,000 is actually a very good deal. So my only question is probably the same as Donna's. Will there be public involvement in the master plan process?
Yeah, so phase 3 under phase 3 phases under phase 2, master plan construction or restoration includes project development meetings, public comments, track invoicing, scheduling monthly reports and progress on support drafting. I think I can speak for the chair of the ad hoc committee, Mr. Stedman. You welcome public input during this process, and that's part of what you guys are looking to do as you move forward with this project, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the comment. Mr. Grenier, the floor is yours. I went to old habits. Go ahead.
I'll be brief. I know it seems a bit contentious, and I'm always surprised that this conversation particularly gets contentious, just from where I sit, because I think I can speak for the board and the ad hoc committee that the whole reason we're going through this, is that the farm, right, is a farm. It's a preserved farmland. It will always be a farm. I think the board agrees with me when I say this, that anything we do with the buildings or the structures or anything like that, it may not be a farm use per se, but it will complement, it will not in any way deter or hinder future agricultural activities at the farm. We cannot, personal opinion here, we cannot do anything at the farm that will hinder future use of the farm as a farm. I think that's number one, and all of us have to have that as our first priority for Patterson Farm, is that I'll say it again, it has to stay as a farm. Everything we do pushes that motion forward. How we get there, I think there's a lot of different ideas that need to play out. I think there's a lot of different methods that need to play out. I think the ad hoc committee is doing their thing, is organize the fashion as they can with the people they have. I think this board individuals may have different ideas. We may have very similar ideas on certain things. And then there's other groups, Patterson Farm Preservation among them, and probably others that may have some different ideas. That's okay. That's why we have stakeholder meetings. That's why we have these meetings. That's why we have the ad hoc committee. That has to happen. That's what, as a parallel, something to compare that to the Makefield study, right? We're trying to bring in stakeholders from across the board to better understand Makefield and how we use Makefield in the future. And that's people that are strict users of Makefield as sports leagues, and others that are interested in something else, or are interested in where that goes and the knock-on effect it may have on other properties in the township, i.e. Snipes being the main one that's there that people are talking about. So I hope, despite the frustration, I understand the frustration after 20 plus years, that we can actually work together on this. Now bringing it back to this particular proposal, there's lots of there's lots of discussion about stakeholder meetings and whatnot. However, there's not a number of stakeholder meetings. There's not a definition of what that means, how many we're going to have. And that's my concern about definition of stakeholders, but how many meetings you're going to have. You're going to be one and done. No one's going to be happy with that. So we just have to make sure as we go through this process that it doesn't have the appearance of checking a box to have a meeting, that it's a meaningful meeting.
We can definitely add language to the contract.
Yeah.
To have regular meetings, because we all want healthy, public, transparent input into this.
I think all of us, and pointing at you, Dennis, I don't know if you can see that. I think all of us want that. I just want to when I speak specifically to this proposal, I just want to make sure that the proposal itself reflects that, and that Avison Young understands what we want, so that their cost reflects that, and I don't want to say both sides because that sounds contentious, but we agree to what we're doing.
Things fly south, we can always reconsider and modify or change or reject.
I think once we go through the process, I think they're going to review it and they'll probably bump up the price. I think they will.
Let the process begin.
Motion on the floor, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Still opposed.
1 nay. Motion carries 3-1. Dennis, thank you so much. And thank you to the committee for putting in all the time and effort. We look forward to regular updates from you.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Have a great night.
You too. Appreciate
Agenda item number
your time.
13, general public comment. Any general public comment? Anybody on the line? Hearing none, moving over to discussion items. Any discussion items? Seeing,
Oh, yeah, I do have a discussion item.
of course.
I don't know if it should be brought up in public right now, but where are we with Morrisville Municipal Authority?
I can tell you generally, we had some conversations about this. The litigation is obviously ongoing. They have not supplied the discovery despite numerous requests and motions. We just sent a default notice to them the other day. So, and frankly, and like I said, their attorney responded by saying something about wanting to negotiate, and our collective response in our office was,
Negotiate what?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. What do we negotiate?
Yeah. So we're trying to bring it to a close as quickly as we can. The default will allow us then to proceed to perhaps a court hearing to determine if there's any responsibility on the part of Lower Makefield for any obligations. Because at this point, despite our numerous informal requests over the years, as people on the board are aware, many in the public are aware, no information was supplied that was helpful or responsive. And then now that we're in the litigation process, the same request has been made. And just yesterday, one of the attorneys working on it made a list of the things that were still outstanding. It's the same list.
I bring, and I thank you,
Sure.
Mr. Truelove. I bring this up to the public because it was disclosed to us, and the public will hear this in a budget presentation in the very near future, that we're talking millions of dollars that are at stake. So
Just to be clear, not millions that we would owe more, but millions that we may not owe as much. There's money
Correct.
set aside already for the maximum amount that we may think that we
correct.
may owe. So this would be and I was a part of the budget discussions, but this is my understanding but it would actually be a reduction from that top amount to something less based upon the fact that they have not adequately responded in any form. Again, whether it's informally in meetings in this building, in exchanges between attorneys, and now that we're in litigation. So that's, it's already at the worst case scenario, and it can only probably get better, but we just have to determine how and when we're going to get there. So.
Anything else? Any other discussion items?
Two quick ones.
Sure.
The Electricity Reliability Committee I got an email. They strongly requested that we come back to consider what we talked about before, having PICO come to a public meeting and talk about some of their future work in the township and things that they've done.
Does the electric reliability, they meet a regular meeting, right?
They I don't want to drag this out, but they have not been meeting because in their opinion, they feel like there's not much for them to do if the board's not going to invite PICO to a meeting.
Would they be open to hosting PICO on their own during their own meeting?
They've done that previously.
And they haven't come?
No, PICO did attend a ERC meeting several months ago, maybe even a year ago.
How was
last year?
What was the outcome?
It was a positive meeting. There was
Yeah.
a lot still to be done from that PICO was talking about, and there's just I'll say PICO actually took into account some of the recommendations that the committee made in terms of better communication, upgrading their systems for notifications to customers and whatnot. And I'm sure they've heard that across their service territory, because that's an obvious issue for everyone. But it seemed like a positive meeting. Still more to be done. But the ERC still feels very strongly, their words, that they'd like to have the board invite PICO to some future meeting.
And the
whether it's-
purpose of that would be?
That PICO has several projects planned in the township that residents don't often hear about because they just go and do them. So they'd like to hear some of those projects. I believe Yardley Hunt just had a large project that
Okay.
maybe took.
Andy, you're aware of these?
I'm aware of the Yardley Hunt. We had a meeting regarding the work.
Would you consider including these in your engineer's report for the next meeting for us? Thank you.
So by saying that you're not interested in bringing PICO,
No.
I'll let the ERC know.
Yeah, I just think that if I can get project updates from Andy, I'm afraid of bringing in somebody and having public comment and a fiasco break out,
Yeah,
right?
I don't, based on what has gone on ERC, I don't think that would happen.
But if they're having open meetings with them already and there's good communication with them, the only reason they would want a bigger stage would be for something different. And I'm trying to figure out what it is that they want different.
I don't
If
think it's
there's follow-up though,
nefarious.
maybe one step would be if ERC met with them last year, maybe Pico could come back to ERC. If there were outstanding items, we'll get the updates from Andy, and maybe that helps either bridge the gap or move us to a meeting with Pico.
That's fair. Cause the one thing, nothing against you, Andy. The one thing about getting project updates from Andy on Pico projects is that that's just the immediate stuff that's going on that they've told him about. Whereas they might have a 5-year plan for the township or something like that, where there's other stuff going on that we won't know about till, if it's a 5-year deal, we won't know about till 4.5 in or plus, and it catches us by surprise.
Could
That-
ERC bridge that gap then between us and Pico and have the ERC present something as far as what Pico is doing?
It's, I'll let me talk to him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem having ERC here to give us a big 5-year plan, project updates, where everything is. I'm afraid of bringing Pico in here and having a public
Yeah.
opportunity to,
I understand.
You know what I mean?
Well, I had to lead a meeting after PA Water had their issues, right?
yeah.
And that's what I was concerned about, but we needed to bring them to the table to
Yeah.
understand what happened, how they fixed it. And I know what y'all think, but I thought it went very well and it wasn't a fiasco.
Yeah.
And Pico's not in that situation. You know what I
Yeah.
mean, so,
Yeah. No, I'm open to it for sure.
But-
So that was discussion item.
and I had
You had one other. yes,
one other,
correct.
because I've been getting a lot of requests again about this. Interview. I don't want, well, something we were talking about
I'm sorry, go ahead.
earlier. But I've been getting a lot of requests from folks to, because of other things going on, not only the township, but nationwide, that folks are very interested in having a discussion about a Human Relations Commission, as I brought up before. But it's, since the last time I brought it up, it's become so many other things are going on. The concern level has gone way up. And I know I personally would be in support of it, if set up properly. And I'm not trying to get into that discussion now, but I would like to, at a future meeting in the not too distant future, to actually be able to have that discussion with maybe even bring in some folks from Bucks County's Human Relations Commission, because they've reached out to me. There's some folks at the state level that are actually fairly local. They've reached out to me.
Mm.
And some other folks in other towns nearby that have almost every town around us has something similar.
They can't get them staffed. They have them, but they can't even get volunteers for them.
Well, that's why I'd like to have the discussion to see if we can get some more information about that. Because I agree with the sentiment. I understand the potential hurdles. But I want to be able to have a meaningful discussion about that and see how we might be able to do that in an effective way, so that if we want to not really staff it, but get the volunteers, that we have a plan for that if we're going to do it. So because I've been getting a lot of questions about it, I think it's a worthwhile discussion to have. So.
Any other discussion items? Hearing none, we'll go over to supervisor reports. Just a reminder, golf committee, the actual golf course will be hosting the Folds of Honor this Friday. It's an amazing fundraiser for those guys. So if you haven't done so already, if you would donate to them, that would be amazing. They're also doing a 5K and a 10K race at the course if you're interested in either of
No,
those.
it's not long enough for me.
Park and Rec Board is going to have a presentation. It's called Pathway to Zero Water. They'll be ready to present that to, actually they're reviewing it right now. It just went out and, first edition went out to the Park and Rec Board. They're going to be reviewing that. And I think at some point they're going to present to the BOS and, the Ad Hoc Property Committee. I think everybody heard from them tonight. So that's all I have to report. Dr. Weiss.
Nothing to add.
Thank you. Mr. Grenier.
I think I already said it. I'm good.
Oh, yeah, already see, yes. Ms. Blondie?
Did you just take credit for the EAC's carry in, carry out process with Park and Rec? Anyway, the EAC has been working on all sorts of recycle projects, and don't forget, you can bring your candy wrappers. But on Saturday, right here, we collected bags and bags and mounds of styrofoam. So kudos to our neighbors who collect this stuff in their driveway and bring it to one of the 3 EAC events each year. The next one will be in January. Once again, we were able to connect with stray cats and give them a lot of the bigger coolers, think Omaha Steaks, that they repurpose into homes for the feral cat community. So it's really, I think it's a wonderful effort that brings together a lot of people in the community. Kudos to the EAC for keeping it going. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any other business?
Anybody know the score?
0-0.
Thank you.
Appointments. So Barbara Nuzolo from the Historical Commission is resigning. So we have an open seat. If anybody's interested in joining the Historical Commission, please reach out to the township.
Probably want to have a motion just to accept the resignation, just so the minutes reflect that.
Do I hear a motion?
Moved.
Motion made by Supervisor Grenier, seconded by Supervisor Blondie. Any discussion?
As the liaison, I just want to thank Ms. Nzulo for all of her hard work. I know the committees sometimes may seem like they're underappreciated, but we definitely appreciate the work that she's put in, and she's been on that for a long time. So she deserves that public recognition.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
We vote on that. Want to make sure we had a vote.
Yeah, any public comment? All those in favor of accepting her resignation, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none.
Aye.
We accept her resignation 4-0, but are sad to see her go. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.